I want to welcome the members and staff and any guests to the September DASNY meeting. Thank you all for being here. It is foggy outside, but I understand that the temperature is going to 80 degrees today. So all this is going to burn off, and it's going to be beautiful here in Albany. We can look forward to enjoying the afternoon. The agenda is deceptively brief, and that's because at the end of all of the work we're going to do, we're going to have a report from UI. They're going to do a presentation here. The more questions you ask during that presentation, the longer it's going to be, which is not to say that you should not ask all the questions you choose to ask. You can wait until the end of the presentation or ask questions as they occur to you. It's important that the members remember that this work is going to very likely lead to some important advances here at DASNY in the way we think about doing business. And to the extent that you have questions about that, please take the time to make sure that we all get the benefit of those questions. And that'll come again at the end of the executive session, which will come at the end of the meeting. All right, so let's get started. We have the minutes before us, the July 19th meeting. You all have had a chance to read them. I assume you submitted any corrections you saw that were necessary. That being the case, may I have a motion, please, to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Sandra. Charlie, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. The Finance Committee report, Chairman Romsky.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance Committee met about 30 minutes or so ago, and we initially approved the meeting minutes from the July 19th meeting of the Finance Committee. And then we advanced and discussed one financing, the United Cerebral Palsy of Dutchess County and Putnam County. That was presented by Steve. After a few questions, we voted unanimously to recommend approval of that offering at today's board meeting. That concludes my report, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Jerry? Hearing none, then we're going to move to the third agenda item, resolution to proceed with the new financing. In the President's absence, behind tab 3 is the United Cerebral Palsy Association of Putnam and Southern Dutchess Counties transaction. Steve Kozier will present the credit summary of the staff. Morning, Steve. Good morning. Thank you.
Under the Public Authorities Law, DASNY is authorized to issue bonds on behalf of Cerebral Palsy Associations of New York State and its 24 affiliates, which the staff report collectively refers to as UCP. The UCP statute also provides DASNY with the authority to intercept funds from any state or local agency or social service district. To date, DASNY has issued bonds for 12 UCP affiliates in 8 separate bond issues. The staff report before you presents one or more series of fixed and/or variable rate, tax-exempt and/or taxable bonds in an amount not to exceed $13 million for a term not to exceed 25 years on behalf of United Cerebral Palsy Association of Putnam and Southern Dutchess Counties, Inc., which will be the only UCP affiliate to participate in the proposed financing. The borrower, which is better known as Hudson Valley Cerebral Palsy Association, participated in the 2002 and 2014 DASNY bond issues for UCP and currently has approximately $800,000 of DASNY Series 2014 bonds outstanding. Hudson Valley CPA is headquartered at 15 Mount Ebo Road South in Brewster. This site serves as the primary location for its day programs and provides clinic space. Approximately $8.4 million of the bond proceeds from the proposed issuance will be used to refund the borrower's Series 2005 Putnam County Industrial Development Agency variable rate bonds, which were issued for the site acquisition and construction of the Mount Ebo Road South facility in Brewster. This project is partially funded with a prior property approval from the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities. The borrower receives additional funds from OTWDD to pay for administrative and replacement reserve costs, as well as funds from the Department of Health and SED, State Education Department, for fees for service. All of these funds are also available to pay debt service. Under the UCP statute, non-PPA revenues are also subject to intercept and are included in the pledged revenues. The borrower anticipates a final maturity for the refunding bonds to be beyond the final maturity of the refunded bonds, but within the limit imposed by tax law. If the PPA is not amended, the amortization of the bonds associated with this project may not be coterminous with the reimbursement provided for by the PPA. Other uses of bond proceeds include approximately $1.1 million to refinance 2 taxable mortgage loans. One of the mortgage loans was used for a residential facility in Carmel, and the other for an intermediate care facility in Garrison. In addition, approximately $330,000 is expected to refinance a line of credit used at the borrower's residential facility in Wappinger Falls. There's a relatively small amount of bond proceeds expected to be used for new money projects. Approximately $350,000 is expected to fund certain capital improvements spread across approximately 8 residential facilities and 2 intermediate care facilities. The proposed bond issue is similar to the DASNY issuance earlier this year for Cerebral Palsy Association of New York State in that it is expected to be a fixed-rate private placement with Oppenheimer funds, a qualified institutional buyer. Security as required by Oppenheimer is expected to include a revenue pledge, the intercept of certain funds payable to the borrower by state and local entities, a mortgage on certain properties, a debt service reserve fund, and financial covenants. Mr. Chair.
Steve, thank you. Just for the record, the Finance Committee recommends adoption of this transaction, or passage of this transaction. Are there questions for Steve? Yes, Tim.
Steve, are there savings associated with the refinancing?
No, there's no savings analysis because the original the IDA bonds are variable rate and are now going to a fixed rate. So
what is the reason for the refinancing?
The reason is their letter of credit provider was really looking to change its business model or get out of this business or change the terms of their letter of credit. So they really wanted to look into other alternatives and get into a fixed rate product.
And then what's the reason for the extension of this?
That's really wasn't their intention when they originally started looking at this. They did an RFP and they reviewed all the responses, and they found this one to be very attractive because of the fixed rate for the entire 25-year term, whereas a lot of the other proposals from banks had a renewal risk after 7 to 10 years. So it's just the product that was offered by Oppenheimer was the most attractive.
Okay. And you note in here that it is not extended beyond the limits that the tax law would permit. Can you just explain that a bit?
Yeah, so the borrower is required to submit a tax questionnaire that is ongoing now. So they have submitted that to bond counsel, and bond counsel will do a review to determine what the useful life of the assets being financed are. And subject to that review is how long they can borrow additional funds.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Steve? If there are none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the transaction? Thank you. Second? Charlie, thank you very much. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Is there none opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Steve, thank you. We move on to the 4th agenda item, which is, Steve, watch your head. It's a little tight, especially for you. The report of the president. Charlie?
Thank you very much. Good morning, welcome back. I hope each and every one of you have enjoyed the summer months. We certainly look forward to a comfortable fall. Before I say anything, we are certainly in the business of infrastructure, and one of the elements that we do is resiliency. And so I'm sure you share with me, as everyone else, the importance of just remembering and keeping in our presence the people in Florida, Houston, and the Caribbean in terms of the challenges and the problems that they are currently experiencing. And when we really look at that, it could be any of us in many respects. So I just wanted to, just take a moment to reflect on what's happening here, given what we do. So thank you. Before I get too far in my presentation, I'd like to introduce, and Tim, if you could stand up and just come to the front. Timothy Atkins is the Director of Intergovernmental Affairs. He will be reporting. You can come to the table. This is a positive match. He is Director of Governmental Affairs. He will be reporting to Caroline Griffin and working very closely with Freeman, all of the teams, and certainly Mike, as well as his legal team. Tim most recently worked in the Office of Counsel and Program for the New York State Senate, where he focused on transportation, infrastructure, and corporations. He also served the Senate as the parliamentarian and director of legislative operations. Before working for the Senate, he was the senior legislative coordinator for New York State Watch. He is a lawyer, like many of you, from Hofstra University School of Law and a BA from the University at Albany. So thank you, Tim.
Morning.
Tim, welcome.
Thank you very much.
You can say 20 seconds.
So I'll be working with Gerard and the management team and just sort of trying to give advice on legislative matters and other intergovernmental issues, and I'll be the day-to-day contact for legislators, the staff, the governor's office on anything as far as our legislative program is concerned, other legislation that would be affecting DASNY, and dealing with certainly the administration of the grants a lot as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you.
I also want to make sure each of you are aware of the governor's statewide MWBE conference being held in Albany on October the 4th and 5th. Like last year, you are welcome to attend. We will follow up to see if you wish to do so and ensure that you have accommodations and are registered. There is a special DASNY session carved out in the schedule from 5 to 6 p.m. on October the 4th, and you're welcome to attend that as well. There will be a number of us talking about our capabilities across the state, and then more importantly, throughout the day, I believe Portia, Steve, and others will be participating in panels. So again, we will continue to have a presence in an activity. Yes, please.
Some of you have attended this conference in years past. It is an extraordinarily interesting assemblage of people who are at the conference to get ideas, to make their businesses known to other businesses who need their services in New York State, as well as to give the staff, the government staff actually, the people who are now putting this thing on, a chance to know who they are and what services they provide and where they are. And so there are all sorts of sessions during the day that allow contact between these businesses that are looking to do work for New York State and the contractors who are ready, willing, and in some cases able to look seriously at who they are and the quality, the kind of services and the quality of services they provide. If you've not been to this conference and you have a chance, if you're close by and you can come in, I'm coming up for the 4th, the session's on the 4th, and will not stay for the 5th because I cannot. But if you have the opportunity to come, even if it's only for a few hours, there's going to be an agenda distributed to all of you so that you will know what panel discussions they're going to be, and then what working group sessions they're going to be during the days. If you can find a way to find some time to come by, it'd be great to have somebody there. That's my pitch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We appreciate that. We want all the marketing we can get. We actually had a very successful, a number of you were present last year. Quite a few of you were present, actually. Because it was the day of a board meeting, so that helps a lot. And we had a luncheon presentation where we easily had over 150 people in that room. and I think it was well attended. We were hoping to do something similar this year, but it's later in the day. But we'll get the attendance and the participation. And we're clearly regarded as a sizable player and a very important participant in the governor's overall economic development agenda, but most importantly, as a premier implementer of MWBE participation and building capacity. So we're very comfortable and confident with that. So we really welcome each and every one of you. And feel free to reach out, but we will reach out to each other. I want to highlight a couple of things. We had a busy and productive summer. Some of the achievements and activities are, I'll tell you about a few public appearances where DASNY's leadership in MWBE contracting was on full display. On August 2nd, I had the pleasure of speaking at the CUNY Construction Fund Contract Opportunities Conference. I highlighted the 50-year partnership between CUNY and DASNY. Over the last half century, we have worked together to alter the landscape of New York City and create new avenues of opportunity. Through it all, we established programs that laid the foundation for inclusivity in state contracting. Today, MWBE contract participation is central to the DNA of both our institutions as a result. As a footnote in our annual report, we have a very comprehensive story on the 50-year partnership. So please take the time to look at that. It's really an exhaustive analysis of the relationships that we have cultivated in terms of financing and helping to build out the CUNY system across New York City and the opportunities that is presented. So we're very excited. But saying that, as we embark on the next 50 years, we face the task of maintaining existing infrastructure while also advancing it to meet CUNY's new needs in a new economy, in a new information setting. Second item, on August 10th, I addressed business and community leaders and Chamber of Commerce members, among others, at this year's Harlem Week Economic Development Day. I discussed building capacity and creating opportunities for MWBE firms and opportunities to work on DASNY projects going forward. From large and small scale construction projects to bond issuances and surety bond training programs, we explained how DASNY is delivering on our mission of inclusivity and helping transform the landscape across New York City and New York State. Above all, I continue to make the business case for diversity by describing how businesses benefit from diversity in their hiring practices to diversity in their partnerships. Members of our resource acquisition team were on site promoting DASNY and other state initiatives. I'll now turn to public finance and portfolio monitoring. Public finance and portfolio monitoring advanced a number of bond issuances this summer. This included closing on a refunding for Nassau Board of Cooperative Educational Services, or BOCES, that will help them achieve about $1.7 million in gross savings over the next 11 years. Nassau BOCES is the largest BOCES in New York State, providing shared services to the county's 56 school districts. This refunding demonstrates DASNY's commitment to provide low-cost financing alternatives to help institutions like BOCES better serve the people of New York State. A corresponding press release was also sent. Now I'll ask Portia Lee to provide you with a market update. Portia.
Thank you, Gerard. Behind tab 6 are the standard public finance reports. Since my last written report, we placed 5 transactions. As Gerard had indicated, one was the Nassau BOCES transaction. We also placed the IAC pool, the Rockefeller University private placement, the Silvercrest private placement, and the sales tax competitive deal, which I had actually mentioned at the July meeting because we had just been in the market taking the bids the day before that meeting. Brief market update, U.S. Treasury and MMD yields have decreased across the curve amidst concerns about geopolitical issues like North Korea and various other concerns like hurricanes Harvey and Irma. Municipal bond funds have reported inflows of 2.1 billion. This marks the 8th consecutive week of inflows. The supply for this week is expected to be about $7.5 billion. 10-year and 30-year MMD, 10-year MMD has decreased 8 basis points since the July meeting, and 30-year MMD has decreased 1 basis point since the last board meeting. Just by way of reference, the 1-year MMD currently is 0.77%, 10-year is 1.86%, and 30-year is 2.73%. The last document behind tab 6 in my report is a memo regarding 3 healthcare transformation programs together with 3 resolutions for board action. Recent state budgets have included appropriations for various healthcare transformation programs to encourage financially sustainable systems of care throughout the state, also in support of the goals of DSRIP. The first program in the packet of information is the Essential Healthcare Provider Program. The second is the Oneida County Healthcare Transformation Program, and the third is the statewide 1 and statewide 2 healthcare transformation programs. The Department of Health has issued requests for applications for each of those programs, and they've made award announcements. It is anticipated that state-supported debt will be issued to fund some or all of the grants that are authorized under these programs. The statutes for these programs require that any projects that are funded with bond proceeds must be approved by PACB. The 3 resolutions that are before the board authorizes submission of these projects to PACB for its approval. The project lists are identified as exhibits to each of the resolutions that follow the memo in your board books. I think I'd like to turn it over to Charlie just so he could give a little bit of background on each of the programs.
So, thank you. So, there are several programs. We're talking about a combined handful or half dozen of programs, all with the common purpose of rebuilding the state's infrastructure to adapt to the change to primarily ambulatory care, or movement toward ambulatory care, and the departure from inpatient care, or at least the number of inpatient days from a traditional perspective. As 2 things happen. One, treatment modalities have changed and improved, thus reducing inpatient days following serious illness and surgery, and also the fact that for the most part the state's effort at improving the availability of preventative health and healthcare, and being able to capitalize on the resulting improvements from preventative health care, being able to coordinate care for folks who have not had case management services, and thus improving the health of those individuals, all spin up to really a need to, one, downsize inpatient care from its historical perspective. And we've seen that happen in less orchestrated manners over the last 20 years in hospital closures. Here we're consciously looking at changing the inpatient model, in some cases building completely new facilities to make for more efficient inpatient models, replacing perhaps multiple hospitals, and at the same time putting a strategic investment in ambulatory care and preventative health care. We're talking billions of dollars, it's not a minimal investment by any stretch of the imagination. Some of it is targeted to facilities that have not been able to accumulate the capital necessary to make that change. Some of it is strategic in terms of assisting in trying to shed some of the infrastructure costs or replace infrastructure with more efficient infrastructure. So we preserve providers in the community for the foreseeable future. And all of it is really to develop a healthcare system that will take us well into the future. So the Department of Health, as well as with DASNY, its partner in these endeavors, have been working very diligently through the process, repetitive iterations of application review and rating, and going through certificate of need applications to support the grant applications. We're working with the facilities to perfect their grant contracts and being able to move forward with these significant capital projects. So it's a significant effort with, I think, significant return on the investment, and we're very excited to be working with DASNY and the healthcare providers in shaping the future of healthcare.
Thank you, Charlie. Are there questions for Charlie or Portia?
Just so I understand, so this is these programs it's the result of a competitive process. There are proposals made, and these are the ones that rise to the top? Or?
Yep, and some of it is a purely competitive process that is independently evaluated and by a team of reviewers from not only the health department but also from DASNY, also from contract employees who were involved. But some are specifically targeted, there's more discretion from the executive, from the OH executive commissioner to direct those funds. But all of these have been subject to a solicitation and application process and a review against the goals of each solicitation.
Strictly a legal matter. The frameworks differ for each program, but a common theme for most of the programs that are here today is that the statute provides that the awards can be made without a competitive bid process, but it does reference a request for application process, and that's in the law. That's the process that DASNY helped coordinate, at least for two of the programs that are here in front of the board today. And for the Essential program was done completely pursuant to statute under the Department of Health's purview, following a similar process. But it's not technically a competitive bid as much as a request for applications.
Which of the two which of the three, you said there are two of them in which applications were received, but not the third one. Which is the one?
I think applications were received on all of them.
On all.
But DASNY's review was very limited with regard to these.
Okay.
We looked at some of them before awards were determined and some after, just to give DOH feedback on which of them involved capital expenditures that could be reinvested with bond proceeds. We weren't involved in the selection at all.
Got it.
Yeah, had a sort of a similar question. So our role in review is the same as it is for any credit. I mean, our DASNY's role how does that differ? How does our role reviewing this differ than it does for any other credit?
So our review really has to do with the bondability, so the capital nature of the projects and whether they could be bonded.
And then ultimately, those projects that can be funded with bond proceeds, either in whole or in part, will be funded with PIT or sales tax proceeds.
Okay, There's
some very large construction projects listed here. Does DASNY construction arm have any role or participation in the oversight or construction of these buildings?
No.
Nothing at all?
DOH has asked us to participate in the seeker review of all of these, so we're doing the seeker reviews of all of them in conjunction with DOH. And they've also asked us to look at appraisals to the extent that that grant proceeds are being used to acquire real property. But that's really the extent.
But the
of our
construction,
role.
though, of the underlying hospitals or whatever the facilities are, right? They're not themselves like a competitive bid process? The hospital itself sort of just determines who it's awarding these contracts to?
The hospitals select the contractors and the methods for accessing capital to support those projects. Obviously, the grant funds are a significant portion of the funds used to make the construction. There may be supplemental financing through one means or another, and that's the hospital's discretion.
And who oversees that hospital construction process or bid process?
It's not the health department, because the hospitals go out and they do their own bidding. They put their projects out to bid. The department will review in the context of a certificate of need application if it's a certified facility, make a determination in terms of cost reasonableness of the construction project and also for the financing.
And DOH holds the grant disbursement agreement with the grantees.
So they do like a rec?
Yeah. They DOH will be.
It's 100% funded, or is it some leverage?
It varies.
Who issues the bonds?
We will.
We will.
Again,
It
they're
is-
sales
yeah,
tax
state
funds.
supported that
The-
sales tax.
In the initial instance, DOH will fund the grant disbursements with state dollars, and then we'll issue bonds to reimburse those.
Well, is this a standalone, or will there be other rounds, future years?
We are expecting to have at least one more round in this fiscal year. So and no telling what the future brings. In fact, after we did the 1.2 billion in capital restructuring financing program, a program where DASNY did participate in the actual application review with us. We weren't sure there were going to be additional iterations. Here we've got another 4 or 5 different programs and distinct solicitations for applications, and so we are continuing to make that investment.
Future rounds, future years would require new appropriation.
Oh, these projects will be under construction and draws from the grant proceeds for the next several years, and the expectation is the state's going to be issuing bonds in incremental iterations to be able to support the necessary cash flow associated with funding those projects through construction.
I actually meant if there were new selections in
Oh.
future years, that would require new appropriations.
I would expect so.
This is, I'm sorry, this is the first round that we're seeing? I mean, you said there would be future rounds, but is this the first time this is?
Well, we have done some for the capital
Structuring finance.
capital restructuring financing program. Thank you. And I know we've had at least one round of those. Has it been?
The board approved those in July of 2016, when we got PACB approval, but we haven't issued any debt to refinance any of those expenditures yet.
So this would be the first then for the other programs.
What do they sign? They sign like a grant agreement with the DOH?
There is a good grant contract that is executed, OSC approves.
Prevailing wage jobs?
Oh, yeah. For at least a portion to be funded. No.
No, they're not, because only prevailing wage is only required to the extent that it would be otherwise required for a particular grantee. So if you're a public grantee, and you have to
This
use
is a public
prevailing
work, it's a prevailing wage job.
No, these are
If it's
not,
considered a public work, it's
then you
prevailing.
pay
Then it's
prevailing wage,
right.
but not just because you're participating in this.
Not because the money is flowing through this thing.
Private, not-for-profit hospital does not, it doesn't decide identity by participating.
Other questions for Charlie or Portia? Paul, Mike?
It's overseen proper, I mean, there's a lot of money here.
Great deal of money. There are 3 resolutions Portia has referenced. They appear behind her memo to the members dated September 7th of 2017. Behind each resolution is an exhibit, and that exhibit contains the essential grants which are being approved, which are being considered in the preceding resolution. As I say, just behind Portia's 3 or 4 page memo dated September 7th. What we are voting on is whether we will approve the submission of the essential grants to PACB. Is that?
That's correct.
I got that correct.
That is correct. That is correct. We are sending the projects to the PACB as required by each individual statute.
There you are. Have you all had a chance to consider this? These, they're certainly in your packets. Everybody had a chance to read. Are there other questions that you want to?
I'm still not sure exactly what we're voting for.
You're voting to
So it's a
authorize.
pass-through.
Yeah, authorize us to submit to the PACB for the required review.
In each of these statutes, to the extent that any of these are funded with bond proceeds, PACB approval is required. And to get to PACB, we have to approve them first. So this is the step to get to PACB that's required under the statute.
And this is very similar. We did this for CRFP previously, and we did this for the HEAL grants previously. The same process.
We will not do any further review of any of these listed projects on a going forward basis. So our responsibilities are completed.
At some point, you'll have to authorize the issuance of PIT or sales tax bonds.
But that like we just issued them in July. We just sold in July, right? So say for example next year anticipated such.
Yeah, I think next year you'll see the authorization to fund some of the CRFP grants that were approved by the board in July of 2016. Now, these you may not see for a while.
Yeah, as George pointed out, some really big projects.
Yeah.
And just one housekeeping matter on the first resolution in connection with the essential program, the date at the top ought to be September 15th, 2017.
I'm sorry, Portia, what's the date?
Today.
At the top.
Yeah, so it should be today's date, September 15th, 2017. It's correct on the other 2 resolutions. My apologies.
That's fine. Let me ask one more time. Are there questions? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the first resolution? Thank you, Charlie. Is there a second? Thank you, Paul. And again, before we vote, that resolution refers only to the 4 essential grants described behind it. Is everybody clear on this? All in favor, please indicate with aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Hearing no opposition, motion carries unanimously. The second resolution, this one dated September 13th, again, would authorize the submission of the proposed grant to PACB for approval. The exhibit B, contains 1 proposed grant in Oneida County, and that is the submission which I am asking you to. Are there questions about this? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to approve the resolution? Thank you very much, Charlie. Is there a second? Paul, thank you. All in favor, please give an aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. The third resolution appears immediately after the Exhibit B, and I've already described what we are voting to do. The Exhibit C, of course, contains a number of, as Charlie points out, very large proposed projects. Have you all had a chance to take a careful look at
And these are not bondable projects, is that right?
These are, but actually, this list includes all of the statewide projects that were approved by DOH. Some or all of them are bondable, but we thought that to the extent that even if a piece of one of them is bondable, it was better to include them on the list. But there will be some for which we can issue bonds, and DOH has appropriated dollars to cover those costs.
And only when the time comes for staff consideration will you all determine whether these bonds will be PIT or sales tax bonds.
And we
As has been the case in the past. It's okay. I'm sorry.
And we've had outside bond counsel look at all of these to do at least a preliminary analysis of what's bondable and what's not.
Who pays them for that?
Excuse me?
Who pays them? Who pays? DOH?
Well, the state. When we go to issue bonds.
Please.
At the risk of going to square one, why is this before us? I mean, this is
Statute.
Statute required.
okay, but we don't spend the state's money. We help finance the spending of the state's money. So it feels an awful lot like we're acting on appropriation of state money on specific projects, which is really not what we do. But I guess we have to do this in order to comply with the process to get it through.
So that we will be in a position to reimburse the state for these expenditures.
Okay. Yeah, Mike is going to say something.
I would just say, we're doing exactly what it says in paragraph 1, that staff is authorized to submit to statewide projects identified in Exhibit C to the PAC for approval as required by the Act. That's all. That's what we're doing. That's the extent of it.
Yeah.
It's a step in the required grant review.
Which one is that?
Paragraph 1 of the resolution, all three.
But essentially what we're doing is we are as a board, we are relying on the underlying activity of the Department of Health and saying, yeah, we trust the Department of Health and this is money well spent. Yes, because we can't really do anything else. We're sitting here looking at a list of projects that we don't know anything about.
That we're not going to oversee.
And some of them are very vaguely described as, one of them, for example, and I'm sure DOH is going to really get to this, but when it says creation of integrated healthcare delivery system in Oneida County for $300 million, it's like a lot of things.
That happens to be the construction of a new hospital to replace 2 antiquated hospitals on hospitals that have merged.
Okay, well, that's good information.
It has all been thoroughly reviewed, and these projects have proved to be the cream of the crop for each of those solicitations.
Good.
And the cost, Charlie, like the $57 million, there's like some analysis done that's sort of at this stage, wherever they are, whether the plans are designed or not. I have no idea whether I'm looking at a projected estimate or am I looking at a set of plans? Are they bid out?
At this stage, most of the plans are schematics, and those costs are estimates.
They're estimates from a CM.
The more detailed plans and the actual cost analysis it will occur at the certificate of need application review process stage, okay. which follows awards being made. Many of those we've already received and have reviewed the CON applications. Many others, such as the Oneida project, is yet to come in.
May I make a comment? Based on what I'm hearing, the members seem to feel that we might have had more information going into this resolution approval than we have. It's clear that we want to get this before PACB, and it's clear the statute requires that this board actually approve what we're going to be doing in order to issue grants. Issue bonds. Maybe in the future it would make sense to give the members a bit more information. I mean, Charlie, you just described the purpose of the Oneida County proposed grant, and it was new to hospitals. That's good information, which we didn't have. I'm not suggesting that there's anything wrong with the process, just making sure that staff understands that going forward, it would be a good thing to make sure that you've provided sufficient information so that if the members are inclined to read all of what you're going to provide, they will have a better sense of what it is that we're they'll have a better sense of what it is that we are voting to approve a submission to PACB.
Okay.
I'd just like to ask one more question, if I understood the conversation, the explanation earlier, our role is to determine that it is in fact bondable. And then having made that determination, then we are voting to send it to PACB. But we don't have any role in determining the validity or of the underlying project, right? The purpose of this resolution is to act on a decision of staff that this is in fact bondable and appropriate to submit to PACB. Is that correct?
The purpose of the resolution is to submit these projects to PACB for its approval, and that is a requirement that's in the statute. We have reviewed, as has bond counsel, on a preliminary basis, the bondability of the projects. Some or all of these projects will be bondable, but as Debbie had indicated, that will be subject to further review. I just didn't want to leave the impression that absolutely all of these projects will be bonded, because subject to further review by bond counsel, some portions of some projects, or maybe some portions of some projects may not be bondable.
And that determination will be made prior to reimbursement. Well, prior to reimbursement. It may be post-issuance, but there still may be a broad variety of things there. But prior to reimbursing the state for costs that the state has expended, they will have to be determined to have been bondable expenses. And all the board is being asked to do here is to approve submission of these projects to PACB. The board is not being asked to approve the projects. PACB will need to approve the projects. This board only needs to approve the submission of the list of the projects to PACB for its review and approval.
I get that, but what I didn't get, and I think what Jonathan said was, in reading the resolution, I didn't get why we were doing that authorization. Maybe, and this is a suggestion for future too, maybe we needed a whereas that said, whereas DASNY is authorized by such statute to boop. Would say, why are we doing this?
Yeah, I think part of what you're hearing is this is a mechanic, it's a procedure, but it feels to us a little bit like we're making some sort of a substantive approval of something, and we're really not. We're not approving the expenditure of money. We're not even approving whether or not these projects are bondable. The act itself perhaps confuses our role in the world a little bit, and so what we're doing is we're complying with the act. We're literally doing just that.
And I didn't get that from reading it.
Yeah.
So, but I think that's right. Okay.
Are there, before we go on the last resolution, are there other questions? Hearing none, the third resolution appears just before the long list of possible projects. You've had a chance to read that resolution. May I have a motion to approve?
So
Thank you, Senator. Is there a second? Harold, thank you. All in favor, please indicate. Aye. Aye. As there are none opposed, the motion carries unanimously.
And then just one other update I'd like to give to the board. I've updated the board periodically on the issuance that we've undertaken of state-supported debt, the PIT or sales tax, pursuant to the authorizations that the board had provided in April of May of last year, or April of May of this past spring. As you'll recall, it was $5 billion in authorization. And I previously updated you regarding a PIT refunding that we undertook together with the sales tax new money transaction. We're now working on the third transaction, which will use the remaining $1.8 billion in authorization that we had received from those combined authorizations in April and May. So that would be a $1.8 billion PIT competitive transaction, primarily new money. It will also include a refunding component. We expect to take the bids the first week in October, close the second week in October. I also wanted to mention more specifically that we expect to include funding in the amount of approximately $250 million for MTA reimbursements, as well as about $435 million refunding of Thruway Authority, Dedicated Highway Bridge and Trust Fund bonds. I wanted to mention those things to you specifically because they were not included in the staff reports that we had provided to the board back in April and May. Having said that, however, we clearly have the authority to undertake those purposes. Specifically, the bond council letter and the documents authorize us to issue bonds for a defined term, authorized purposes. The MTA funding clearly comes under that definition of authorized purposes. Likewise, on the refunding side, the bond council letter and the documents also allow us to refund bonds, basically to refund any state-supported debt. And clearly the Thruway Authority's Dedicated Highway Bridge and Trust Fund bonds are other state-supported debt. But as I said, we provide to the board at the time, a listing of various purposes that are expected. To the extent that we had not included those at that point in time, I definitely wanted to come back, make the board aware that those are two purposes that we expect will be included in this transaction that we bring to market in October.
What's the MTA piece again?
It's a reimbursement of their capital.
Just remind me of whether we've done this before, the MTA.
We have not, although we did do a refunding. We did do a refunding of certain MTA bonds probably like 4 years ago or so. Yep.
Questions for Portia?
Thank you. We're now in construction. I want to take a moment and thank Steve and our entire construction division. They deserve a big thank you and congratulations for the completion of another successful summer, completing more than $100 million in residence hall projects for senior campuses across the state. It was well received. We got a tremendous amount of press attention. Training and communications team, Dave Caratano, actively and aggressively really presented this to the media. The governor also picked up on these issues and certainly was featured in terms of the impact across New York State and particularly the upstate economy and the benefits that accrue from the work that we are doing. So we're very excited and very pleased. As a matter of fact, early this morning I saw yet another one popping up. So they've been happening for the last 2 weeks consistently. So we're very excited and look forward to doing a lot more next year into successive years. This included about $30 million in summer work projects that were completed between the time students left campus for summer and returned in fall. The annual effort is of tremendous value to student partners and their ability to attract students in a highly competitive environment. It is the type of program that DASNY is seeking to replicate across our organization. The construction division also completed larger, longer-term residence hall renovations so that they were ready for students in the fall. The projects included a $19 million upgrade to SUNY New Paltz 49-year-old is it Beaver? Bevier. Bevier, okay, that's Bevier Hall. And a $15 million gut rehab to SUNY's Plattsburgh Wilson Hall. The completion of these projects was announced by the governor, which is a reflection and recognition of the positive work DASNY does. Steve, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, behind tab 7 are the 3 construction division reports. On the cover of the construction projects report is a recently completed Oasis project. The project was located at the Norris ATC facility. It was an HVAC modernization project. Total budget was approximately $1.8 million. The scope included asbestos abatement work in the basement and mechanical spaces, leading to the renovation of the main mechanical systems. We installed a replacement chiller, chilled water pumps, air handling units, and distribution pumps and fan coil units. All existing ductwork was cleaned, piping was re-insulated, and we put a dehumidification system in the basement to ensure that moisture mitigation was in place. Pathfinder was our design consultant. Design started in April of 2015, completed in April of 2016. We had 2 contractors on site. Our mechanical contractor was T-Bell Construction, and our electrical was Hewitt Young Electric. Construction started in October of 2016 and completed in June of 2017. This was a full-service project for DASNY. Most of our Oasis work is modified service, meaning we don't hold the contracts, but we did hold both design and construction contracts for that project. On page 2 of the report, there's a number of new projects I just wanted to highlight. There's a $133 million rehabilitation of Building 39 at Central New York Site Center to OMH. 3 GOZA projects under the Public Housing Resiliency Program, totaling approximately $23 million. And the Dick Van Dyke ATC for Oasis continuation of Phase 5 work worth $6 million. There were 3 dropped projects. Queens College, a $70 million gym renovation project. This project was never fully funded. The funding required for the project was approximately $150 million. As time went on, the funds were reduced to this project and utilized elsewhere in the CUNY system. So at this point, we're below the $5 million mark as coming off of the report. The HTF Tottenville Dunes project also dropped from the report as the construction estimate is below $5 million. It's down around $2.9 million. And the Western New York Children's Psych Center program no longer required as these services are being relocated. On page 7, construction expenditures, 2016 through July, prior year, $168 million. Current year through July 2017, $262 million. So we've increased by about $94 million year over year. Just some updates. Just a few more details on top of what Gerard mentioned on the SUNY program. So 34 summer projects completed worth approximately $30 million. Those projects started in May, completed in July or August. And there were 5 major capital projects that either started a year ago or started this past January. Their total was $80 million. Those projects were Wilson Hall at Plattsburgh, as Gerald mentioned, $16 million. We did a $4 million renovation at Canton, the Mohawk Tower East Wing. A $13 million renovation of Scales Hall at SUNY Oswego, the $19 million Bevier Hall project at New Paltz, and a $10 million Herkimer Hall dorm rehab project at New Albany. Currently under construction in the SUNY system with completion dates at the end of this year or August of 2018 are SUNY Alfred Mackenzie Hall Phase 1, that's an $18 million dorm renovation project. Brockport, our new design build residence hall project at $24 million, moving along nicely on schedule. Another project at Plattsburgh, Macomb Hall, $15 million. That's due to complete in July of 2018. And Buffalo State Bishop Hall, $16 million, also due to complete in July of 2018. And we've got a number of soon-to-start capital projects in the SUNY system. Another Canton project for $4 million that'll start in January of 2018, complete in July. Buffalo State Tower 3, $16 million. That'll start at the end of this school year and complete the following year, 2019. Oneonta McDuff Hall, same schedule, $16 million. And Albany Dutch Quad, $26 million WEF. Most all of the SUNY 2018 summer projects are now in design or are completing design in preparation for a fall 2017 bid schedule. NYCHA, we've got 27 of the security projects completed. We've got another 22 in construction. The 16 electrical projects, we have one of those in construction. The other 15 are completing design. On the appliance side, 18 of the developments are completed out of approximately 30, and another 4 are in progress. On the quality of life projects, we have 3 in construction, 12 projects seeking approval to move to construction. So the overall program is gaining momentum and moving forward. Just to mention the Niagara Falls State Park, we're wrapping up the 5-year program out there that consisted of 18 projects totaling over $65 million. This was a fun project. It was a great run for our Western New York staff. Michelle Paris did a great job leading the project for DASNY. And it led to just a complete facelift of the park with new bridges, new trails, new building structures, new police station. It's top to bottom. We touched over the square inch of the park. South Beach Psych Center, building packages 1, 2, and 3 are complete or nearing completion. Building package 5, which is the main package, the MEP and general construction and fit out, is well underway. The project is moving along well, remains on track. It's a $265 million project to be completed in June of 2019. Just an update on the Court Officers Training Academy project. We have now targeted a November completion date. We're working toward that date with all trades on site. Site work is well underway. Permanent power is in progress and expected soon. And interaction with DASNY's code permitting group is also well underway. Just a quick update on Javits and Moynihan. The transformer building at Javits, the construction is restarted. We're doing some flat work and grade beam work. The convention expansion itself, the north building is under demolition. That'll make way for a new loading facility and parking garage. Our code guys just continue with the review of plans, mostly for subsurface work on the expansion at this point. And at Moynihan, the demolition is well underway, if not wrapping up, and the rebuilding of the train hall work is progressing. We continue our role there as the code permitting agency, overseeing all code tests in accordance with the New York State Building Code. Our code group is also seeking resources for those 2 projects from our construction managers. We've interviewed some candidates and are making arrangements to bring staff on board. That concludes my report.
Are there questions for Steve? Yes, Cindy.
Steve, contractors are flocking to Houston and soon will be to Florida. What's that going to do to the cost of construction?
Well, I think that a lot of the contractors that do DASNY's work are kind of ingrained in the public sector work in New York City. I mean, I think some of the larger ones, there may be an impact, but there aren't that many large projects that we're working on that will impact our jobs. I mean, we kind of play in the middle down in New York City, and I don't see those contractors getting stuff. So I don't see it impacting us.
Other questions for Steve? Then we will, Mr. President, you finished?
Finished, thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Just a quick comment. Gerard mentioned David Peritano. I feel like I know David Peritano. He's behind you.
He's right there.
I read you every morning. You're doing an excellent job.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Terrific.
My friend.
The Chief Financial Officer's report appears at tab 5. Kimberly, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, thank you, Al. I just want to point out a couple of key items within the financial report itself. We are performing well thus far in the year relative to our budget. A couple of key items there in terms of our private financings. Through July, we closed on 3 deals and we generated fees of $375,000 out of our $2.2 million budget. In August, we closed on an additional 3 deals, and that brings our fees up for the year to $840,000. So just a little bit under the 40% mark year to date through August. In terms of our work for supporting our public clients, we are doing better than our budgeted level. So we budgeted about 88% of our direct hours we're going to be charged to our public clients, and we are a little in excess of 93% through the year so far, and that's really driven by the escalation and work that we're doing on grants administration. In terms of our operating expenses, we are a bit below the budget at this point, approximately $200,000 when you net out our personnel and our non-personnel expenses. That's really a timing issue though. We do expect to spend the full operating expenses. Largely legal and IS expenses can be very difficult to budget when in the year they're going to happen. But at this point, we do expect to spend the full budgeted amounts. Are there any questions?
If there are no questions for Ken, then I'll ask Michael Cusack whether you have anything to report.
I have nothing further to report.
Flash, nothing. Over there. That's right. All right, thank you. May I have a motion, please, to go into executive session to discuss financial and credit history of particular corporations? Charlie, thank you. Beryl, thank you for the second. All in favor, please indicate with aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are in executive session. There are. Is there any other business come before the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion please to adjourn the meeting? Carol, thank you. Is there a second?
Yes.
Charlie, thank you. Sandra, thank you for the third. All in favor, please indicate.
Don't you have to say we didn't conclude any
Oh,
business?
yes.
Put that on.
It'll be
We'll
in
note that in the minutes.